Surely, Despicable Me and Minions are among the best animation franchises ever. But what was GRU's evolution as a supervillain like?
Go away, I'm not home!
In the first Despicable Me movie from 2010, we learned that felonious GRU was born in 1964. GRU is the result of the relationship between Marlena and Robert GRU, one of the greatest supervillains in history. However, at some point his parents separated while GRU was still a baby, separating him from his twin brother, whom he had no idea existed. From the scenes in Despicable Me 3, we can see that when they were babies, they were very close. Even so, GRU was raised by his mother, and when he was just 9 years old, he saw a man go to the moon and fixated on the idea that he too would go there one day, which was actually his villain DNA speaking louder. Whenever he mentioned this, Marlena, his mother, dismissed his dream, despite his natural aptitude for creating devices, such as his own rocket, which he made using trash and street signs he probably stole from somewhere. Around the same time, GRU and his mother went to the villain convention in Orlando, where we see the two in front of Dr. Nefario's stand, looking at an ice gun. It seems that Marlena bought the gun for her son, as at the end of the same film, we see that the young version of our favorite villain uses it to steal the crown that Scarlet was taking from the Queen of England for the second time. GRU then, with a small Kyle on his back, mounts an aerial device probably built by himself, as Dr. Nefario had not started working for him yet, and returns to the USA with the Queen of England's crown, probably marking his first major act as a villain.
Oh, now I see!
After witnessing the beautiful villainous act of young GRU, the Minions regain their nature and elect him as their new leader, naming him Mini-Boss. Thus, the yellow creatures who had spent hundreds of years without serving any villain see in GRU a new reason to continue existing and follow him to his home. Upon arriving there, GRU rejects them, but after much insistence and a heartfelt plea, GRU takes the 899 minions as his servants. At this time, the group of little yellow beings begins to support GRU's cruel acts, which included a cheese gun to cut in line for ice cream, and super powerful fart bombs he developed to empty the cinema so he could watch the movie Jaws, which was recommended only for people older than him at the time. And if you're a fan of GRU just like us, comment below #MiniBoss to let us know who really loves the villain and Minions movies.
You don't want to cross me?
After betraying and getting rid of their former leader, Knuckles, the Vicious Six ends up sending an invitation for GRU to participate in the selection of the new sixth member of the group, mistakenly thinking he was a dwarf. When they discover he is just a child, they dismiss him immediately. GRU leaves, but not before stealing the Zodiac amulet from the gang of criminals and engaging in a thrilling chase alongside his minions. Knuckles watches everything from afar and then kidnaps GRU, discovering that the boy had no evil plans for the object. The mini-boss and the ex-leader of the Vicious Six then form a mentor-apprentice relationship, even robbing the Bank of Evil and meeting Mr. Perkins, having their first encounter with Vector while pretending to be grandfather and grandson, just to steal the Mona Lisa painting from the financial institution's vault for supervillains. Eventually, the group of villains takes GRU hostage and seizes the amulet, resulting in a final confrontation, with the kung fu-trained minions and Knuckles on one side and the supervillains transformed into Chinese zodiac animals on the other. GRU and his servants manage to defeat the group, who are arrested by the AVL, led by a young Mr. Ramsbottom, but Knuckles does not survive the fight with Bell Bottom and ends up dying. At least that's what everyone thinks until the funeral, where we see that the supervillain is alive and well and will continue being GRU's mentor. Now GRU had a group of servants, a high-level villain mentor, and an inventor who would work exclusively for him, Dr. Nefario, who sympathized with the boy from the first time he saw him. Around this time, GRU also had a traumatic experience involving his first love, a girl from his class, who actually despised him, as did most of the students at the school. This caused him to develop a fear of approaching women and being rejected, as we will see later. After the trauma at his previous school, Knuckles probably got GRU a spot at the LPB supervillain school through his underworld contacts, where our favorite villain met Maxime Le Mal, who would become his great rival during all the years he was there. Even after graduating from school, they still hate each other.
I hate that guy.
After graduating from school, GRU fully embarks on his profession as a supervillain, committing some of the world's greatest crimes, always inspired by great villains like his own father and El Macho, invading museums, banks, and stealing the miniatures of the Statue of Liberty and the Eiffel Tower from Las Vegas, not to mention the giant screen from Times Square. But all this was training for his greatest plan, which he had since childhood, to steal the moon. After stealing the shrink ray developed by an Asian country, GRU is robbed by Vector and devises a plan to adopt the girl selling cookies to the nerdy villain, as a way to invade the place and get his ray back. Over time, the villain grows fond of the girls, to the point of loving them more than himself, forming a happy family, while Vector is sent to the moon after our villain decides that the girls are more important than achieving a dream. After leaving the villain life behind, GRU opens a jelly-making company, but the taste of the sweet is terribly awful, and Dr. Nefario decides to accept a new job offer and leaves the team after decades of service. The scientist's new employer is El Macho, whom everyone thought had died, but actually had a plan to use the minions to create a super army for global domination, with the help of a serum developed by the Doctor. Lucy is then sent to the AVL and offers GRU a freelance job at the agency to stop the villain, with everything turning out well in the end thanks to GRU's horrible jelly, which served as an antidote to the serum, and with Dr. Nefario undoing all the harm he had done. After everything, GRU overcomes his fear of talking to women and proposes to Lucy, bringing her into the family, and the girls accept her as their mother. If you've made it this far, you're definitely a fan of animated movies and cartoons, so make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, so you don't miss our new videos that we post every day.
Thank you.
Even without being raised by his father, GRU always knew he was descended from a long line of supervillains, as he always had a family tree on his wall. However, he discovers that one person is missing from his lineage, his twin brother, whose existence his mother always hid from him after making an agreement with his ex-husband where each of them would raise one of the children. GRU and his family go to Fredonia, the country where his father and Drew, his brother, lived, and discover that when he was alive, his father was one of the greatest supervillains in the world and was proud of him and his villainous actions, always keeping an eye on the other son. Drew and GRU quickly develop a brotherly relationship and face Brat, the new supervillain who planned to dominate the world and take revenge on Hollywood after having his supervillain show canceled for being too old. After the return of the minions, who revolted and spent some days in prison where they became the big bosses, GRU and Drew managed to defeat Brat, and GRU regains his job at the AVL, which he had lost precisely because of Brat.
You're fired!
What?
That's totally not fair!
Drew lacks much aptitude, but has the desire to keep the family tradition and be a supervillain, so he steals GRU's jet and leaves with the minions, who also wanted to return to mischief. GRU then becomes a high-level agent within the AVL and goes to the 1985 alumni reunion, the class he was a part of, with the main goal of arresting his arch-rival from school, Maxime Le Mal, who had transformed himself into a half-human, half-cockroach. After succeeding, GRU returns home, and we see that the family has grown, with the couple having a new child, GRU Jr., who loves his mother and hates his father for some unknown reason. Maxima escapes and kidnaps GRU Jr., transforming him into a half-cockroach baby. With the help of Poppy, a fan of GRU who is his new neighbor, GRU reaches his enemy, and in a final showdown, the love of our villain for his son makes the baby break free from Maxima's potion trance, and the two defeat the villain with the help of the Mega Minions, created by the AVL to protect the world, in the style of the Avengers and Justice League. GRU then rescues GRU Jr., who, with the help of Dr. Nefario, returns to normal. Thus, the whole family and the minions reunite once again, this time with the little baby accepting his father and showing love for him, while Maxime is also transformed back into a human and placed in the AVL prison, where we discover that all the villains who appeared in the franchise, like Scarlet and her husband, the Vicious Six, El Macho, Brat, and even Vector, who returned from the moon, are kept imprisoned. As in all Despicable Me movies, the ending is always accompanied by a fun song with various characters dancing happily, which is certainly very entertaining. And if you want to keep having fun and watching great videos, here on the channel, we have many. We've selected these two that are appearing on your screen now. If you want, watch both and then leave a comment on which one you like the most.